Integrations are rarely the headline feature, but they're often the reason you win or lose a deal. There's stat upon stat upon stat that shows how integrations affect product adoption, churn, and NRR. But what does that actually look like in the wild? We asked users of B2B SaaS products about moments when integrations made or broke the deal. Can you tell us about a time when an integration didn't work as expected?
When things didn't work, whether it be sync errors or data not mapping correctly, it took so much time away from being an NC operator to go fix. And then obviously like impacted how how I was able to take on more in my role and get the necessary things done. And a lot of times, like if it was really bad, sometimes I'd yank it out and go through Workato or Zapier or something like that to try and re-architect myself instead of trying to like problem solve, because sometimes I would spend so much time with P&E to try and fix that like it wasn't doing what it needed to do and it was so time consuming for me. Like I still had to get other things done, right? So I also think it depends on the stage of the company. So like that's a whole nother thing, right? Like if you're trying to iterate a new piece of product and like I'm betaing it with you, that's one thing. But if you're going out and selling something and it just doesn't work out of the box, like people are just going to stop using it.
I've worked with a lot of platforms that claim they have integrations with other, like a CRM, Salesforce, HubSpot, something along those lines. And then you start building the integration and you quickly realize it's actually through a third party tool. And there's lots of tools like that that are great for cobbling solutions together, but they just don't give you that same native sync that you really want from an integration. So you really quickly run on sync delays and having to manage both sides of the integration. Data gets lost, duplicates get created all the time. It's really frustrating. And I've actually had experiences trying to do I won't name the tools, but sales automated outreach, triggering off of ABM platforms through one of those third party tools that we thought had a native integration. And it turns out it didn't. And the speed to lead was so delayed from one to the other that we lost probably $200,000 of pipeline that we back calculated and had to switch platforms entirely as a result, which we're in the middle of doing right now. In terms of would they buy this again or would they renew, it's actually worse than that because they're thinking of churning, even though they've prepaid for an entire year and are in month two. So you can lose customers instantly by not having the right integrations.
The integration that I'm thinking of was just not a very streamlined user experience. There was a connection between the two platforms, but I'm talking like 10 clicks, having to wait, not a fantastic experience on mobile. So, what ended up happening is that there just wasn't that much benefit over using the two platforms separately. And what was really painful is that customers started asking for workarounds, using those workarounds, and this obviously caused tension with the partner just because they weren't seeing much usage.
When integrations have unnecessary complexity or unintended consequences, it's really nice when there's tooltips and implications that are communicated in layman's terms in a user interface when configuring the respective mappings on both sides, because you could have a read write, a bidirectional data feed that inadvertently completely clobbers something in a system that has rich data and not know it and not understand the implication, because at face value, it seems that it's going to behave in common sense behaviors, but it may not. And you learn the hard way.
In the list of examples of integrations that have gone poorly, again, I have a number of experiences where it's either not as expected or just not functioning in the core fashion. But without naming any tools specifically, when Marketo was working with a partner to ingest intent data into Marketo's own instance of Marketo, the integration was I think designed in Excel and not in the real world. And so the intended capabilities of the data that was pushed into Marketo's instance of Marketo was the data was not usable. The data was placed in custom objects in a fashion that couldn't be properly leveraged. And in fact, the volume of API throughput that this integration demanded meant that the Marketo instance was, in essence, bricked for about 120 minutes every day, every morning. And that is just not the way an integration should function. The regular freezing of the Marketo instance because of the way that data was being forced in meant that there were periods of time, and we tried to work through this for probably about 7 or 10 days, where the vendor was attempting to make tweaks and make adjustments. But for a period of probably about a week and a half, there was a period in time where you might fill out a form on the Marketo website and you wouldn't get the autoresponder or the response saying, "Thank you for registering to an event," as an example. You wouldn't receive that for at least 120 minutes if you started at the beginning of that window. So not only did it make the usage of the tool by the marketers and users of Marketo, not only did it impact that experience, but it also impacted the external customer experience because of the impact that integration had on the platform itself.
So right now, my team is actually working on trying to implement a subscription platform that charges customers for usage of their platform. They're a PLG company, and they bought this product that is supposed to integrate with HubSpot as their CRM. Very quickly, they are learning integration means one field, email address, pops into HubSpot. That's it. So they get no information about if they're actually paying or what their role is or if they're actually using the product. They have no visibility to anything that's happening. And it's only one way. HubSpot is also not feeding that back into the subscription tool. And basically it means the integration is pointless and you might as well not even have it because all it does is create a mess. The idea was to actually activate non-paying customers into paying customers by understanding what they're doing. And without that information, it's just completely useless, unfortunately.
It's like a blind cost that you're paying when it doesn't work, right? Like that falls on the in-seat operator to go fix if things don't work. And then you're getting pressured from leadership like, hey, you bought this tool, you spent this money, why doesn't it work? You told me that this was going to be a solution, right? Like, and I think that there's a blind spot there that PD&E teams have where they don't realize the impact that it's having on the end customer when things don't go right.
When you build an integration and you don't do it well and you do it, you cut corners, especially when you know that it's going to be used by a lot of your users, it's totally felt. Another thing is when you don't update it, right? And then you have a customer that's been with you for quite a long time. And you don't invest in them because you're investing a lot in like your new customers, but they're a significant or strategic customer. That I've seen that happen, 2-3 years down, hey, this integration is not the best. And then the question comes, hey, do we invest? Did they invest? That's also a partnership conversation.
Tell us about a time when an integration works really well. What happens?
I've worked with integrations where they felt like they made my life easier. I was able to ascertain the data that I needed when I needed it, and I knew what to do with it because it was actually pumping over the right information. So an example of that was when my team had been using 11 disparate systems to manage customer accounts. And we were managing over 2,000 customer records. And we had to go to our CRM. We had to go to our support ticketing system. We had to go to our recurring revenue subscription system and try to get all the information that we needed to be able to answer basic customer questions, to be able to plan renewals. And it was really cumbersome. Once we established a central source of truth, a single pane of glass, and we were able to leverage the productized connectors that had been built by the respective applications and bring that data into a centralized system, it created the telemetry data. So my team had the ability to proactively manage customer accounts to help prevent recurring revenue and customer churn versus having surprises and a customer deciding they were going to cancel. When connectors were particularly helpful was when the data mappings were really clean and discrete, that there wasn't a lot of translation and table mappings that needed to be done. So even now in my role, when we're working with our customers in their technical projects, we ask them if they have a unique customer identifier. One of the very first questions we ask, because we know how important that is into getting the data sophistication flowing between systems.
Yeah. So my favorite, partnership experience is when an integration actually creates a virtuous cycle. So the one that I'm thinking of, the integration connected the products at the right point in the workflow in the right way, right? So users were not just able to do more with us, but they started inviting their collaborators, internal from other teams and even external to their experience. So this created not just stickiness, which is great, which we all want, but this increased usage by multiple personas drove upgrades as well as net new sales. So everyone was happy.
I mean, Good Bath is like a very quick setup, right? It works seamlessly. I don't have to like continuously monitor and check on it. If there's product updates, that doesn't break things, right? Like that's what I look for in a good integration. I want to see that like it's well supported by product and eng too. And I also like to see when things like when they do iterate on things that it doesn't impact integration, because I have had that happen as well, where they're trying to make improvements in the product, but then it breaks something mid integration and you've got to go back through and figure that piece out. And that's just, it falls on the user to fix a lot of times. And in my opinion, it shouldn't. Like, we're paying for a product, it should meet our needs, because we all have a million things on our plate and we need to get those things done within a timeline. That's just added work that we need to take care of that we shouldn't have to, in my opinion.
An integration that worked particularly well and I have used for a very long time in Salesforce implementations is demand tools. And so the capabilities that demand tools bring to a Salesforce instance, in addition to cleaning data and deduping data, it provides a lot of strong administrative capabilities to make data changes and do significant updates in Salesforce in ways that Salesforce is just now making available to admins. So I think there are numerous examples. Demand tools is one that comes to mind, but there are others in the market for Salesforce and other tools like, Marketo and large scale platforms, where an integration tool brings a capability to one of these large scale platforms that the platform itself is not capable of doing, but users on a regular basis have a requirement to do. And so it's a matter of understanding what the regular use case is of administrators and users of tools, and what the API capabilities are of those tools to, in essence, patch work that the platform itself hasn't been able to develop around yet.
So I have, heard a lot of, hey, I saw that you guys have this integration and you have this product. I actually heard it today, which I love hearing it. You're actually at the top of our list of vendors because you guys have this integration and the other ones don't. So I would love to see how that works. It will make my life so much easier because I use this platform. So that's a big win.
I've worked with a lot of really good integrations. I'm really pleased with integrations that allow me to send the really important data back and forth between both systems quickly and cleanly. So think like to like in terms of objects. If you can really understand, for example, the Marketo Salesforce integration, that's like the best example out there, because Marketo structures their programs the same way Salesforce structures their campaigns. It's a one-to-one sync and it happens very quickly. So the go-to-market time is fast, the value's there, and customers are sticky as a result, because it's so embedded, you can never take one away without the other.
If you could speak to the people building integrations today, what would you tell them? What advice would you have?
First of all, you're doing amazingly important work. I think that in case it hasn't already been expressed to you from the community of users and administrators of tools all across the spectrum, the ability of those tools to integrate to other platforms is one of the key flexibilities that we appreciate as administrators. So I would suggest that in the age that we are in, where the demands of machine learning and AI for faster access to integrated data across various systems, the notion of harmonizing data at scale should be a front and center priority in the way the APIs are structured. And then the use cases of automation or transformation or other elements of those integration points should be driven by, you know, standard prioritization. But I think beginning with that notion that data at scale is going to be the primary desire of people who are looking to connect systems together should be a core tenet of the way that you're designing and thinking about the way integrations should function.
So, as it relates to the integration aspect, I think really, really seeking to understand is a whole different layer of responsibility and importance within integration because it is connecting two systems. You're not just advocating and building for one system necessarily in one data set, you're potentially touching many. So there's even a heightened level of responsibility as an engineering team or R&D team to understand really truly the job to be done and get it right and aim for simplicity, not complexity. It doesn't have to do everything to start. Just have reliability and efficacy and then layer in more sophistication, differentiation, etc.
Integrations have to make sense from a user experience standpoint, not just commercially. Sometimes there's a lot of pressure to get a partnership in place from leadership, from the partner, but when scoping the integration, is this something that actually removes friction? Is there the capability to allow users to do more, do it faster, have a better experience? And if the answer is no, then I would look for something lighter weight in the short term, maybe a co-marketing campaign to prove out the value and make the case for resources to build a really great integration, even if it's a little later.
So when I look at a tech stack and I evaluate a tech stack, the first thing I look at is like, what are the systems I absolutely have to keep? Are those the integrations tied in natively with those systems? If they're not, I will most likely cut those first, just because it's one more thing that I have to manage outside. And with everything being pushed on operators right now, asking us to run lean, asking us to do more with less, like the more integrated things are into key systems, the easier it is for me to do my job and do it well in a fast paced environment.
There should be a budget for it. Hey, if you could have a team that works together with a partnership team that knows like, okay, we're going to be building 3 partner or platform integrations per quarter, like then you already have it invested in and you can run fast. Really depends on the company, depends where they sit in their life cycle. So I've seen both. I've seen we have tons of resources and we can run fast. I've seen, hey, you really need to like stack it up, get in front of the executive team and explain why this integration needs to be pushed in. And then, even when it gets pushed in, unfortunately, it doesn't get in this quarter or next quarter. So you're sitting there waiting and in that time, technology is evolving. Or by the time that you actually start it, potentially that technology has turned into something else, or that platform already has your technology built in because they built it in house or another player came in. So a lot of it is speed and relevance and understanding how important these integrations are for your customers. I think that's really important.
It's very important to me that an application I'm investing in has good quality integrations. The scenario in my past, I was managing a large global team, over 100 people with 11 disparate systems to have to go to get information to prepare for a customer call. When we got that down to a single source of truth because of connectors and integrations, we saved an average of 7 hours per week on every customer success manager's time. And it truly was powerful to give time back to the CSM to have those proactive conversations with customers. So we were building the relationships and not firefighting and trying to save churn.
When vendors are building integrations, I wish they would just ask their customers, what do you care about syncing between the systems? Because it's really clear to me when I'm using both setting them up and utilizing the data very frequently, it's clear that someone who hasn't actually consumed the other tool built this integration with what they think it should look like, but they don't actually understand the pain points of the end user.
I'll use a Workato and a Zapier if I have to, but like I want an out of the box integration that cleanly integrates into my tech stack. I mean, even if I'm looking, there's been so many times where I've had to come into companies and look at tech stacks and been asked to cut. And the very first thing I look for is what cleanly integrates well. And if it doesn't cleanly integrate well, then I'm cutting that tool. Because if I have to build an out of the box, like something makeshift through Zapier or Workato, like it's not, that's more time stuck on my end to get things done when I already have a million things on my plate. And it's more uplift to keep it up and running, right? And ensure that like what you're building is actually working. So I would much rather have something that's out of the box and natively integrated so that I know that I can just click it, be done with it, know that it runs consistently, and have the support from the product side if something were to go awry.
I think the quick tool tips and as an accompany to that, having quick bite-sized videos. I think HubSpot does this very well. I think it's really easy to understand the different connectors and integrations available and how to use them and some best practices. And then as a tertiary supplement to the layman is a community, having a place to go to get that information. So generally, I think connectors work well when the naming conventions of things are nice and easy to understand, that it's best suited for the end user consuming the information. So it's in the language that they're most familiar with. And I don't mean that as in, English versus Mandarin. I mean in technical terms that seemingly relate to the basic user story, the basic use case. And then that there's little additional helpful pop-ups or quick means to access supplemental support information.
So, what stories are your customers telling about your integrations? If you're looking for tips and advice for building robust integrations that scale, come chat with us at Pandium. We have lots more stories, ideas, and practical resources available on our website.